All right, should be in now. Test. Test 1, 2. Let us know. My bad.
Test.
Beautiful. Hey, guys.
Hey, bud. How much time we got?
Like now.
Good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, can you cut him down in my headphones somehow? Or if you can't, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Daniel, can you cut yourself down a little bit?
I can. How's that?
That's better.
All
Thanks,
right.
bud.
No problem. All right, here we go.
I get scared touching anything.
Now, we're talking sports. It's time for the Saturday Sports Countdown with Brett Pritchard, Randy Lee, and Luke Robinson. Auburn, Alabama.
Okay, when
around the SEC.
When JJ gets done talking, you go ahead and take it when you want it. You'll go up automatically. Go ahead.
Welcome into the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. Randy Lee alongside Luke Robinson this morning. And, Luke, it's been a lot of rain in the area for the last month, it feels like, maybe just the last couple of weeks, but a beautiful day in Alexander City, Alabama, and we're happy to be on air as we're heading into football season, and that's where our bread is buttered here in the state of Alabama, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Can't wait for football season to roll around, and it's really, man, it's been great this morning. My brother and I got up and played tennis.
Did y'all?
Yeah, we did.
Did you win?
I did. We played a second kind of mini set, and he won that. Austin's got one heck of a drop shot, I'll tell you, and it's got a backspin on it and all that. But if you can make him run the court a little bit, you got an advantage.
Yeah, and if you don't know Austin hasn't been on the program in quite a while. Austin is an offensive lineman's dream. He's a coach's dream. When you see him, he's squared up, about 6'5", 320. Am I giving him a little bit of...
I would say you're being fair.
I'm being fair. 800-782-0108, 256-234-6464 here locally. Love to hear from you out there. It's a beautiful downtown Alexander City. We're in the middle of Sun Festival in Alex City, and I've been over to Farmers Market and our PATH community enhancement project that's going on to continue to get the community in better shape, and we've seen all the numbers out there. That's important, but it always helps when you've got great weather, and we know that a lot of you over in the Auburn Opelika area travel over to Lake Martin to visit us. We, in turn, do the exact same. We travel over to the Auburn area to go not only ball games, but to go to great restaurants and to see each other. So it's great to be on 95.9 in Auburn and Opelika and 97.5 Kowaliga Country. And, Luke, I made the August schedule for our programming for our group, and wished all of us luck as I sent it out. And I'd just like to know your thoughts. Y'all were on the road Thursday night for the AHSA Radio Network was covering the All-Star event, North-South All-Star game. But I'd like to know your thoughts as we head into football season. It's going to be a grind. Which portions are you looking most forward to this next year?
I really am. I'm looking forward to the Champions Challenge because that kind of does signal the beginning of football season. All the initial practices, et cetera, they don't get me as fired up. I like to see two teams not affiliated with one another clash. But this North-South game the other night was a lot of fun. I got to say, that game is always more exciting and full of more hungry players, I think, than even the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, something that we call every year and that I really enjoy. That is more of a recruiting guys' haven. The North-South game is really more of for kids who they're either going to be playing their last game ever or they're trying to get some notoriety in their own right, but not notoriety necessarily from Alabama Auburn. They're trying to get from Jack State, from Stillman, guys like that. And we got to see one of our local products, Bryant Horn, threw a touchdown. First time he had the ball, double reverse, flea flicker. And that's something you don't see in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. I mean, this was something that the coaches pulled out. And what was beautiful about it, they pulled it out twice in the same game, worked both times.
Yeah, you know, North-South All-Star game, you really do. You get the guys outside of the top, 40? Top 30? How many are on the Alabama-Mississippi team? 35
wow,
or 40?
I mean, yeah, at least. And I would say there wasn't anybody that I saw. This is no offense to anybody on either one of those teams. But I don't think there was anybody on either one of those teams that Alabama and Auburn seriously considered. They may have said, okay, you're a plan double C backup. But and that's not meant as an offensive thing. it's just telling the truth. There's a guy named Jamarcus Brown who rushed for 329 yards in the state championship game for 1A Pickens County. One of the best performances I've ever seen. Having said that, I don't think he could play in the SEC. I just don't think he's that talented. I mean, and that's okay. He's going to Stillman College, and I think he can be a superstar there. I mean, not everybody can go to SEC country and do well. It's a very difficult, high-caliber thing. And Jamarcus Brown, I think he's fantastic. I would brag on him all day long. But I think where he's going to school is probably about right. He might be able to go a level up than that. I think he's going to go to Stillman and do really, really well. He might be able to go a level up. But like Bryant Horn going to Jack State, I mean, that seems about right. I mean, you've called him all your life. That's not an offensive thing. I'm proud of him. I want him to go to Jack State and kill it.
You know, I'll throw a name out there that you and I called for Demopolis High School, DeMarcus James. You and I thought that he probably didn't have the top-notch speed that it takes to be a running back in the SEC, and I can remember y'all calling the state championship game. I was involved also, but I remember you doing some stats or something and us just raving on him. And he had, 270 yards in a state championship game for 5A Demopolis as they just rolled through it. And I do remember that. And now look at him. He's going into his senior campaign. He's a first-team preseason All-American in the conference. Jacksonville State went as far as they've gone in a long, long time last year. And a lot of response. You know, we still get to watch these kids. I think that's what you're saying, and that's the fun part of it.
Well, it's almost these kids can't rely on pure athleticism alone. Jamarcus Brown and DeMarcus James are two exceptions. They are more athletic than the group they're with. But most everybody else in this group, they have to be more technical and more mechanical, and they have to be more fundamental. And they are. And so it's really more pure football. I mean, I said, Brett, there's the one thing we enjoy about this game, when we watched an Alabama All-Star game, Alabama-Mississippi, I should say, it seems like a lot of the kids are out there playing for the spotlight, or they're playing to show you, this is why I'm a 4-star, this is why I'm a 5-star, this is why I'm committed to LSU, whatever. And sometimes they kind of showboat a little too much. These kids weren't doing that. I mean, these kids were out there playing for pure pride. There were some skirmishes, which, nobody actually took a swing. So I think that's part of football. And if you're out there and if you kind of get into a little shoving match, and that tells me that you want to win, that you're out there and you're caring about what's going on. How many times have we ever seen something like that in Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game? Not saying we want to fight. I'm just saying the desire, the hunger. We try to build it up as an Alabama versus Mississippi thing and state pride on the line, and all that's a good point. But these kids, if you tell one of these kids, this may be the last time you ever put pads on, you ever play competitive football, they're going to go out there and give their all, and every one of them did. And I thought it was just an awesome game. It started out 14-0, and the North kept creeping back in. They had ample opportunity to tie this up. They ended up losing 20-12, but it was a lot of fun to watch. And there was a huge crowd out there. I was blown away how many people. I literally, Randy, I don't mean saying this in a disparaging light, but I thought there were going to be 10 people in the stands. I didn't think there'd be anybody there. And our side of the field, I would say it was 3/4 full, and that's a big deal for Crampton Bowl.
800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. I know you were doing color the other night. You mentioned Bryant Horn. He was 6 of 8 passing for 78 yards and that touchdown. Did we have any other players in the local area, including Auburn, Opelika, Central Phoenix City, the Montgomery schools, that jump out at you that you remember seeing the other night?
I don't remember seeing anybody from the local area. Now, there was one other kid from Robert E. Lee that happened to be there. I don't remember his doing anything that jumped off the page at me. What's interesting about Bryant Horn, he started out the game, obviously, 1 of 1 for 62 yards and a touchdown. He finished the game 6 of 8 for 78 yards and a touchdown. So he ended up he completed 5 more passes for only 16 more yards. So I thought that the North defense kind of picked it up after those 2 blown coverages early on. Lane Moss, a kid, and I'm trying to remember which high school he was from. Was he from J.O. Johnson? He may have been from J.O. Johnson, but he was a big, strong guy. They're 6'5", probably about 220. Ernest Andrews, he's Nate Andrews' brother. Nate Andrews, of course, played defensive back for Florida State, had 4 interceptions last year. They played Auburn last year. He's from down there in the Foley area, and he was able to, or was it Fairhope he played for?
I think he's from Foley, but I
think it is Foley. So he goes to Foley, and Alabama and Auburn don't offer him. He ends up going to Florida State, and being a top freshman, a top true freshman for the national champs. I thought that he was kind of impressive at times, or his brother, I should say, Ernest. But he ended up leading them in rushing with 10 carries for 35 yards. There wasn't anybody besides Jamarcus Brown stood out to me as probably the best player, but there was a kicker whose name escapes me right now too. All the stats aren't up here. I can probably find that out. But my goodness, he kicked one from 50 yards, and it would have been good from 57. It blew Brett and me away. I thought he should have been the MVP. He was just incredible. He was dead on every time. He was also the punter. He was also the kicker to begin the game and after kickoffs. I just thought he was unbelievable. I don't know where he's going on the next level, but I looked him up. And this is just to tell you how inexact of a science recruiting sites can be. I love recruiting. I keep up with it. I think, if you get more 5 stars, you're going to win more games. People tell me, what about Tyler Love? What about this guy? Well, sometimes they don't pan out. And sometimes 2 stars do pan out. You give me more. Alabama's been number 1 in recruiting for the last 5 years, and guess they've been the best program for the last 5 years, unquestionably. So this kid, though, this kicker, was ranked the 26th best kicker in Alabama. And he goes to the North-South game, and he just absolutely kills it. And he in his recruiting profile, it talks about he wants to be an engineer for the Navy, and he was just a real admirable kind of kid. I thought he was unbelievable. I thought he should have won MVP. It ended up going to a linebacker out of Andalusia who did make some big plays, but, man, that kicker just blew Brett and me away.
Another thing, as you mentioned Brett getting blown away, I wanted to bring this up and get your thoughts. I know you interviewed Jamie DuBose, and I pay attention because you and Brett do a majority of the interviews, and high school coaches in this state, how they handle the media and how they correspond with people. Coach Horn does an outstanding job for us here, so everybody endears themselves to us. And high school coaches are a little different, I think, even than colleges, because that community embraces that coach, I think, as much as anyone. They feel like they're part of them. They see them out eating in the restaurants. They don't feel much different. They want that coach like a Danny Horn to raise their kids as one of those types. But Brett thinks the world of Jamie DuBose. It's at Central Phoenix City. Just some of your thoughts, Luke.
Well, I got to interview him at halftime, and, of course, he's done some broadcasts with us. He's done a lot of booth work with us at the Super 6. And, Jamie, it was tough. I had some questions laid out for him, and I didn't know how far I wanted to go with this thing because, number one, if you've ever done radio broadcasting and you get somebody in at halftime, you have about a window of anywhere from 6 to 10 minutes you want this interview to last. And sometimes you get somebody that gives you yes and no answers, and you better have about 10 extra questions to throw at them so that you can eat the time up because your producer's over there, and he can't just fill it in with commercials. You'll lose people. But Jamie DuBose, you don't need that. You need 2 questions, and you can let him roll. And I actually had a backup question about, hey, how are people at Charles Henderson reacting to your quick departure? And we'll talk about it when we come back. But luckily, I didn't have to ask it. I was scared I was going to have to get there, and I didn't. So.
Well, Central Phoenix City, I know they're thrilled to have him, and that program, you better watch out for them. And the whole area, I'm telling you, right here, if you're living in this portion of the state, it's been good for a long time. But I can't remember a time that Auburn and Opelika both have been as strong as they are right now.
Right.
One or the other has been strong at times, but not both of them at the same. With Phoenix City coming back up and Benjamin Russell back in the thick of things, it's going to be a lot of fun. 800-782-0108. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
Three, two, one.
Welcome back into the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. I'm Randy Lee alongside Luke Robinson. It's a beautiful day outside. If you're in Auburn and Opelika, hopefully you'll get out and about and go around that beautiful community. If you're here in the Lake Martin area or coming into the Lake Martin area, we've got Sun Festival going on here tonight. We'll have Diamond Rio at the Sportsplex. A ton of other activities going on, like a cook-off. Barbecue cook-off over at the Sportsplex throughout the day today between 12 and 6. And the opening band, let me tell you, last night we had a band battles concert right across the street from where we are, Luke, at Strand Park. And Funk Nation was the fifth band to come out, the fifth of 5. And they really brought it down. And they ended up winning the band battle, so they will lead off tonight, Funk Nation, leading into Diamond Rio. But it's been a great week here in Alexander City in the Lake Martin community with Sun Festival. As Luke, we've been talking a little high school sports, and, you know, that's what differentiates this show from some of the others that we do. Our association with the Alabama High School Athletic Association, I think it's our 8th year, Luke, going into the radio network. We'll be back at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn to call the Super 7 state championships, and that's a good place to start here. I love this 7A classification. I think that it's going to really help out the 6A classification. I think that's the one that the state is looking most forward to, because some very strong communities like an Opelika High School that'll give them a lot more opportunities to play for state championships.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I mean, it's so exciting to see the regions in 7A, too, particularly for me. I'm talking with Jamie Dubose, going back to that conversation for a second. Central Phoenix City is in there with Prattville. I believe they're in there with Auburn and Opelika, if I remember right. That is.
Well, Opelika's in 6 now.
Oh, excuse me, in there with Auburn, I should say. And they've got just an incredible region that's going to be so much fun. And I asked Jamie about that because those two teams play each other on September 19th. And, man, you talk about an oddball homecoming. That is going to be just crazy. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know it's going to be on regional or at least statewide TV, because I saw my old broadcast partner, Jerry Young, in the booth the other night, and he talked about the fact that they will be at the Prattville Central Phoenix City game, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But I think you're right. Opelika in 6A, Spanish Ford in 6A, my goodness gracious.
Carver, Montgomery in 6A.
Yeah, I mean, Carver just got a kid to transfer from Greenville, and he's the brother of who was the kid from Greenville that went
Kenneth Carter.
He's Kenneth Carter's brother. He's going to be one of the top recruits, I believe it is, next year too. They already have Lindell Wilson, who is an incredible linebacker at Carver, so they're going to have just an unbelievable team at Carver Montgomery, and they've been strong for quite some time now. I mean, they've been the pride of Montgomery.
You know, I just saw, and you and I love recruiting, and Max Preps for the high school ranks does really the best job, I think, of getting information out there. If you're looking for stats to go in and do color like you and I do a lot on Friday nights and leading into the Super 7 state championship game, we need to know some stats, need to know something on these kids. Well, Max Preps comes out with their next year's sophomore class preseason All-American team. First, I want to start with the number 1 recruit in the nation, and I know this is crazy, but going to the sophomore class as I'm looking down this list, the kid from over in Louisiana, I think his name's Dylan Moses.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. He's been committed to LSU since 8th grade.
Yeah, I mean, when you see an 8th grader, and Luke, I'd like your thought. I mean, do you think that you know, more and more of this is going to happen? I mean, when you go and you see a kid and he's in 8th and 9th grade, one that's on this list, he was an 8th grader when we went down to Spanish Fort 2 years ago and played them. They moved on to play for a state championship. His name's Thomas Johnston. He's a preseason 10th grade All-American, 6'2", 205. I remember seeing his stats as an 8th grader, and I said, it's got to be a misprint in the program there. And then started talking to some of their fan base, and no, it's not a misprint. So Thomas Johnston's another one. There was 2 kids from the state of Alabama that were on the preseason All-American team for the 10th grade class. The other classes will come out later, but Thomas Johnston's one, Spanish Ford High School. Markel Benton, 6'2", 205, from Jamie Dubose's Central Phoenix City team. Look out for Central Phoenix City. I'm telling you, they're loaded.
Don't give Jamie Dubose athletes, because he will run all over you. But I going back to Dylan Moses for a second, kids have started – people ask, why is there so much flipping going on? Why do so many people switch their commitments now? And here's the thing. I think kids commit so early to guarantee themselves a spot and to kind of get some limelight, because what's the harm in committing? See, once you commit, the school's not legally tied to you, but they're kind of bound to you in the sense that to drop you gives them negative press. And every school has kind of encouraged a kid to look around when they commit really early and they realize, okay, they're not going to develop in their senior year. But sometimes you get stuck with that kid. I mean, because the kid knows he's got a spot there, and they can't just drop kick him. But if you do that, the school comes out looking really bad. So Dylan Moses has committed to LSU. It gets everybody off his back. If he wants to flip, he can still do it the night before signing day and still get away with it, and then he didn't have to take all the grief all this time. So it's like, what's the kid that just committed to Auburn? Nate Craig, the wide receiver out of Tampa.
We'll have him on Sports Call Tuesday, by the way.
And everybody said this, wow, this is incredible. And I told Brett the other night, I said, I would be willing to bet almost, and Alabama got 2 4-star kids, one out of, I think both of them out of Georgia the other day, or one out of Florida, one out of Georgia. And I said, I'd be willing to bet 2 of those 3 kids don't sign with Alabama and Auburn where they're committed. I'd almost be willing to bet Nate Craig doesn't sign with Auburn, because there's going to be so much in-state pressure between now and then. And what's the harm? Why does it hurt him to? If he wants to sign with Auburn, he still can. They're still going to have a spot for him. If the kid out of Savannah that just committed to Alabama, if he wants to stay with Alabama, he can. But he's going to have some in-state pressure, and he's also closer to South Carolina, closer to Florida State. What's the harm in committing? It's almost like the kids hold the cards now.
800-782-0108. Let's go back to the phone lines. JC and Tallahassee, you're on Sports Blitz. Yes, JC, you there?
Another sports show this morning, and I don't know, it just brought up a question, I'd love to know the answer to. They were talking about, how important coaches are in these kids' lives, and high school coaches, college coaches, et cetera. And, Bobby Bowden was talking about what's changed since you first started coaching to, the end of your career. He mentioned, just the parenting. And I know this is a broader issue than sports, but how do what's the solution to get us back on track as far as parenting and, raising kids right? And I know, just how important coaches are. What are y'all's feelings on that?
Personally, I think talking about it is good. The more, I think, look, you can't make someone want to be a good parent, but you can talk enough about it and make it the right thing to do enough. Am I saying that correct, Luke? I just think sometimes in society you get into ruts from generation to generation, and you don't do the right thing. But then somebody's going to step up and do the right thing. And I think the more that you educate yourself and the more that you communicate about it, and the more Bobby Bowdens that go on stage and he points to it and somebody writes an article and says, this is the major issue, then I think more people perk up and say, I'm gonna get this thing corrected at some point. It may not ever correct itself.
I think the genie's kind of out of the bottle. I mean, I think parenting has gotten worse and worse and worse. I mean, I do. For the most part, on average. I mean, there's some guys who are better and women who are better parents than their parents were and down the line. But for the most part, we glorify them. We glorify the athletes. So we don't really punish people enough or parents enough who push their kids too hard or try to live through their kids. You go out there, you go to any ball field and you watch somebody play baseball, and you'll see some dad losing his mind because his kid happened to strike out on a good pitch, or because his kid had an error, or because his kid made a mistake running the bases. Again, it blows me away to see some of that stuff. I mean, I get it, you're frustrated, but it's all part of sports. You're not going to be perfect all the time. But at the same time, I feel like we glorify them as fans, we glorify all these kids, and now it's trickling down. It used to be in the pros, now it's college, and you're seeing it start to trickle down in high school when you got a kid like Dylan Moses who's in the 8th grade, and everybody's been kissing his butt since the 6th grade because they've told him how awesome he is. LSU needs you, LSU needs you, and how's he not supposed to have a big head?
Very good points, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side. 800-782-0108. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
Good morning.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. We're live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill as we are each and every Saturday. Love for you to come out, great lunch specials each and every time. The one thing that we're highlighting now is the new happy hour specials that JR's has included from Monday through Friday, 4 to 6. $5 pitchers of beer, $4 select appetizers. They've also got a great new selection of beer up here at JR. So I'd love for you to come out and be a part of the sports atmosphere here at JR Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Alexander City. Luke, we've been talking high school sports as we try to do as often as possible here on this program. We will dive into college athletics starting the next segment. But one thing we haven't hit on in quite a while is recruiting here in the state of Alabama. Not only Auburn and Alabama, but we'd like to talk about the top recruits from the state, and a lot of those guys in the top 30 are from this local area.
They are. I mean, this particular class is interesting. I don't think there's anybody, even Darren Payne, who is listed as a 5-star out of Shades Valley, I don't think there's anybody in the state of Alabama that is a lock to be a superstar at the next level. Now, the past few classes, we've seen some guys like that we think are going to be locks at the next level. But I look at Darren Payne, when he went to the opening, he looked okay. I look at Lester Cotton, he's really shot up the charts, but is he one of the best offensive linemen we've seen in the state in the last 10 years? I mean, I don't think so. Same with Kerryon Johnson, very good, but he's kind of a tweener. I mean, he's a strong running back. There's no question about it. Tyler Carr, kind of like Lester Cotton. And DeSharius Flowers, who's listed as the 5th best player out of Viger, he's a running back / safety, and he's very, very good. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying that I don't see anybody that just necessarily blows you off the page.
Great thing I'd like to say about those top 5 here, though, all 5 are going to either Auburn or Alabama, 2 of them. As you talk about Kerryon Johnson and Tyler Carr going to Auburn. The other 3, Darren Payne, Lester Cotton, and DeSharius Flowers are all committed to Alabama. And I hate to see a top 10. I'll even say a top 10. If we want all 10 of them, I'd love for them to see them stay here in the state of Alabama.
Well, I was happy to see Brandon Kennedy out of Wetumpka. If you want to talk about more local type kids, commit to Alabama. Very good kid, very smart guy, and very good football player. So I'm glad to see a kid from this area head to Alabama in that regard. Now, Nick Gibson is a guy, the one guy on this list in the top 10, and Darren Payne isn't committed yet, but I think it's a foregone conclusion he'll commit to Alabama. Nick Gibson is a kid out of Pinson who is incredible. Last year doing the scoreboard show, there were a couple of times I think he scored 6 or 7 touchdowns in a game. But he recently committed to Mississippi State. Alabama and Auburn decided, you know what, we don't have a committable offer for you yet, and I think he went ahead and jumped on that Mississippi State offer. And another guy that's not committed is Bradrick Shaw out of Hoover. We've seen him a couple of times in state championship games, and I think he's a good player too. Is he Alabama and Auburn good? I don't know. I'd hesitate to say that.
One that you didn't mention is the number 6 player in the states, Darrell Williams. He's committed to Auburn, a linebacker. Not too often you see 2 kids in the top 10, actually 3 in the top 10 from Hoover High School. Now, they are the premier program in the state of Alabama. I don't think anybody would argue that statement, but very seldom do they have 2 to 3 guys in the top 10. Normally, they just have very good players and maybe one that jumps out like a Chad Jackson, that you'll see a Jalen Denson from time to time that will jump up the charts, but 3 this year, Luke.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Christian Bell and Darrell Williams, and then they have another linebacker coming up in the 2016 class. So you're going to have a hard time moving the ball on the Hoover Buccaneers this year, and then Bradrick Shaw can keep the ball out of your hands anyway by rushing it. So I think they're going to be a strong team again. And you look over at, speaking of the local area, Anthony Jennings, Rivals has him listed as the 12th best player in the state. I think that may actually be a little low for him. I don't think people give him enough credit for his athleticism. He's very, very good. He can also play tight end. Alabama may need him there. And Amonte Cabin, who is out of Smith Station, that's kind of this local area too. That's a kid. He's only listed as 3 stars. He's the first 3-star prospect in Alabama, meaning he's the highest rated one. And I think that he's being undersold a little bit. My guess is he ends up committing somewhere like a Mississippi State too, and he's the kind of kid that ends up playing for Mississippi State for 4 years and haunting Alabama and Auburn.
I'm of the opinion Brian Blackman's doing an outstanding job at Opelika High School. This program is putting out 3 or 4 Division I prospects each and every year, and it starts this year with number 16 prospect in the state is Quandeski Whitlow, a 6'4", 230-pound defensive end type, the same body frame that you're used to seeing an Opelika Bulldog look like. Just an outstanding defensive player.
Yeah, and we've seen South Carolina really develop some of those kids lately that always seem to end up in the NFL. And, again, this is another kid that's going to go to South Carolina. I think he'll end up playing 3 or 4 years and always be the kind of kid that comes back, and when they play Alabama and Auburn, they play extra special.
As you look down, when you move down to the number 23rd ranked player is Jalen Harris from Montgomery. He's committed to Auburn. He's a tight end type. Phoenix City comes back in the list with Travion Samuel, a 5'7", 175-pound running back. You think he can go? I would bet you anything.
Yeah, there ain't no question about it. If he's at Central Phoenix City, he's an athlete.
Yeah, and closing it out as we'll move into the college ranks, as I hear the music in the background, one more name right there from Opelika High School that we haven't mentioned yet. I think there's 2 more, but I missed one. But one more is Jared Gentry, a defensive tackle, 6'2", 323 pounds. Good luck playing Opelika up front on the defensive line this year. They're going to be stacked. When we come back, we'll talk some college football. We'll take your phone calls, 800-782-0108. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
Three, two, one.
Welcome back into the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. We're live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill, beautiful downtown Alexander City. One special we always talk about, and my kid's not quite of the age yet, but $1.99, bring your kids out in uniform. They'll eat off the kids' menu all season long, whether that be a youth league uniform or a practice uniform. A great deal. Luke, I've got 2 nephews. I've got a niece, and I've got a son that's coming through very soon, and I'm sure that we'll be taking advantage of that.
Oh, yeah, and it's something that you should take advantage of. I don't know why we just don't see people in here in uniforms all the time, every day.
800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. I'd like your thoughts. I read a lot of blogs out there or tweets or whatever you want to call it. Now it's kind of hard to decipher the difference between one or the other. But the other conferences outside of the SEC complaining about ESPN bringing the SEC in this week. The coaches, last week they had media days, then they bring the coaches in this week, and it really takes the attention off of the media days the other conferences had. Luke, I don't think it. I think the SEC should be biased to the ESPN should be biased to the SEC, and so I think it's hard to deny. But I can see where they're coming from a little bit, though.
This isn't a everybody gets an award sport. If you're the most interesting, you're going to get the most press. The SEC is 10 times more interesting than any other conference. I mean, it just is. It is more interesting than the Big 12 by a long shot. It's definitely more interesting than the Big 10. It's definitely more interesting than the Pac-12. I mean, Pac-12 can be a little bit of fun, but who's the most fun team in the Pac-12? Oregon, and they keep blowing it when they keep having chances. So people people now know what their MO is. Southern California, they've dropped off because they've had some issues. Stanford's
not a perennial power, but they are creeping up to become that, I guess.
They are, but Stanford wins Alabama style in terms of the style of play, but they don't do it necessarily by blowing people out the way Alabama does.
And they don't
do it as sexy. They don't have the history, and they also don't have the athletes. I mean, they do it more yeoman's effort type stuff, and congratulations, kudos. I mean, I'm not saying you're not a good program. I'm just saying when you watch Stanford play, it doesn't necessarily set the world on fire. And look, I enjoy pure football like anybody else, but I also enjoy seeing some of the best athletes. Alabama happens to play that style, and LSU kind of plays that style, and they do it with athletes that blow Stanford's doors off. Now, I'm not saying Alabama's going to beat Stanford every time they play. I'm just saying that it's more intriguing to watch the SEC. The SEC has colorful coaches. When Nick Saban was an absolute rock star at SEC Media Days. Steve Spurrier is the one guy everybody wants to listen to. Who's the one coach, unfortunately for me, that I got to see was Butch Jones, and all of his answers were so canned. I mean, it was just I was saddened because I was like, you know what, Gus Malzahn is up here saying things. Nick Saban is saying things, and Steve Spurrier and man, Kevin Sumlin was so cool the other day. The way he handled all the questions about Manziel. That was awesome. And Butch Jones was very Pac-12-ish or Big Ten-ish with his answers. It was just, we're going to go out there and give 100% every day, and blah, blah, blah. And then you quit listening because it's not interesting anymore.
800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. Our first trivia question of the day, as you call in, we'll give away a Sportz Blitz Auburn or Alabama T-shirt for this. What team will face the easiest schedule in the SEC this season? And that means SEC conference, talking about the conference schedule they will face, the SEC teams they will have to face. Which conference team faces the easiest schedule? 800-782-0108.
Let me say one other thing, totally off subject. This segment sponsor was Dark Insurance, and Randy, I sent you the pictures of the tree that fell on my courtyard, and it destroyed a lot of stuff. And I've never had to file a home claim before. I've never had to do any of that stuff, and I didn't really know the process. Everybody over at Dark Insurance Agency helped me so much, and they did such a fantastic job. I'm so incredibly happy with the way it worked, because you hear about nightmares dealing with insurance. So when we have an opportunity to give a testimonial for somebody specifically that happens to be a sponsor, I want to do it, and I want to tell everybody at Dark Insurance what a fabulous job everybody did, to the agent, to the adjuster, all the way down the line. I'm absolutely thrilled with the response that I got from Dark Insurance Company. So for whatever that's worth, if you're looking for home insurance, car insurance, whatever, I would definitely recommend Dark.
Have you looked into the numbers on the SEC network? I know that this has been the topic for a long time, but have you seen as they add Time Warner Cable this week in Bright House. They're up to 60 million households that they will be in the upcoming market. And the numbers that they expected, they're exceeding the amount of money that they're going to be able to bring in their negotiations with the network. Sitting in this state, Charter, DirecTV are still out there as big players that will, I think, will have you haven't heard it yet, but I think they'll definitely have the SEC network. But just some of your thoughts on where that stands, Luke.
Well, my thought is I have DirecTV, and if they don't get the SEC network, I will no longer have DirecTV. It's that simple. Same thing with people I know who have Charter. Why do you want to have a network that doesn't carry the one channel you feel like you have to have? Has anybody ever looked more forward to a channel than this one, at least in this region? Ever? I mean, have you ever just said, oh, my God, HBO West is coming out, and we might get it, and I'm flipping over it.
First year, I saw the numbers, top 5 networks in the country and how much you pay. So your cable bill, this is how much goes to individual networks. First off, ESPN is 6 times what the second closest network that you personally pay for. $6.61 of your bill each month goes towards ESPN. Pac-12 is actually like third on that list, but they've been around a year or two now. The SEC is 5th overall in the country, just starting up. Here in this market, they're going to get $1.60. So I saw the numbers. If you were to factor in the $75 million that they were hoping to get to start the SEC network, it would be $661 million just in subscriber fees each and every year that this thing it's going to be a monster. You know it is.
Well, this kind of does go back to what we were talking about earlier about how do you get your parenting better, how do kids listen to parents more. Well, why should they? I mean, because they know they're about to be superstars the moment they set foot on campus, and this thing is about to blow up NFL style. And I'm just telling you, I mean, we created this beast, and we love it, and we're doing a sports talk show, and it's fantastic. And man, I was just talking to my fiance this morning about, hey, we can't do this on that date. I mean, that's Auburn, South Carolina. Can't do this on that date because it's Alabama, LSU. Can't do, and we plan our lives around it. So we have created this beast, and I'm willing to live with it.
And some people may say that it's kind of sad that we have, but look, I mean, everybody has things that they enjoy to do. I hope you do. I hope you have a hobby out there that you enjoy. And I know both you and I and most of my friend base, college football is what we do. We go to tailgate. We travel around. You've taken your kids over the last 6 years. I can't tell you how many different locales that you've taken your kids to Alabama football games. It gives you a good excuse to go travel to that region that you probably wouldn't do before. But, we truly do love it. But back to the SEC network, it's going to be a monster. And one number that I saw this week, or one thing that I saw this week that I was really happy about, each of the SEC schools in year 1 are going to bring in more money per school than the Longhorn Network and the Notre Dame Network combined brings in. And I think that is great that you can have an SEC and you can build a product around a group of teams rather than one team splitting apart and saying, like Texas I feel like has, we're big enough to do our own thing.
We are just one big family reunion, and you can insert your own incestual joke here if you want to, but I mean, the SEC is what people say it is. We love to make fun of each other, but if somebody outside the family comes in to make fun of one of us, we let them have it. And so we are going to support our network. This is our network, and we are going to buy into it. We're going to love it. We're going to watch the old games. The Auburn Texas A&M game was on ESPNU this morning. I couldn't stop watching it. I mean, I just wanted to see it. I mean, it's football. It's 2 teams I know about. I want to see it. It's intrigue. It's Johnny Manziel. It's Nick Marshall. It's Gus Malzahn. It's Kevin Sumlin. But at the same time, I knew how good of a game Wisconsin versus Arizona State was last year, and it was ranked the 25th best game by the same countdown. And I tried to watch a minute of it, and it was just the energy wasn't there. The emotion, the organic love for the sport just wasn't there in the stadium, and you could feel the difference through the TV.
Which SEC team is our trivia question out there, has the easiest conference schedule this year? 800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. We'll give away an Auburn or Alabama Sports Blitz T-shirt as you call in and get that one correct. I'm going to let you mull over something while we're going to break right here. But, Luke, as we're talking about the SEC Network, we're going to talk about the hosts that are on the SEC Network, but I'd like your thoughts on national hosts. Who do you really like? Which programs do you really like out there? As we're in media days and we're in the mix of all this and we're seeing these guys constantly, which ones do you really like? 800-782-0108. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
Three, two, one.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. We're live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill. Remember that JR's now has happy hour specials between 4 and 6 on Monday through Friday. Love for you to come out, unwind after a busy day at work. Come out here, $5 pitchers of beer, $4 select appetizers, and tons of other specials throughout the week at JR Sports Bar and Grill in beautiful downtown Alexander City. Our trivia questions: which SEC team has the easiest conference schedule this year? 800-782-0108. As we were going to break there, Luke, I asked you a question, and Andy Graham and I have touched on this slightly, but I know that you definitely listen to a ton of talk radio and follow a bunch of sports programming out there. As the SEC Network nears, first off, your thoughts about the show lineup and the host that we'll have on the SEC Network.
Well, I'm pro. I'll tell you what, people have really given Greg McElroy a hard time. And I'll tell you, I listened to his show the other day, and I mean, he's got some kinks to work out, but I thought Greg McElroy was pretty doggone good, and he was very well versed in other conferences and other teams. And look, I don't want him up there being nothing but pro Alabama. I don't want that. I want to hear about college. I mean, because he's taking the place of Bill King.
I think it's good TV too for him to be that way.
I do too. I want guys who can, I want some Alabama fans to go, well, he's not homer enough, because to me that tells me, okay, he's trying to come towards the middle. I mean, you have to be able, look, if you're an former Alabama guy, and you can't say something positive about Auburn last year, you're just not being true to the profession. Same thing with Auburn guy and Alabama 3 years ago. So you got to be able to be true to your profession, I think, and I think Greg McElroy is going to be okay. I'm glad that Tim Brando wasn't on the network. That was probably my biggest victory. The fact that Tim Brando is not going to be associated with the SEC network.
You don't think too highly of him.
He's probably my least favorite broadcaster out there. I mean, it's so bad that I won't listen to his show no matter when it's on, what's going on. If ESPN had World Cup play-by-play on, which is generally pretty boring, I would listen to that over Tim Brando, and I did listen to it over Tim Brando.
Paul Feinbaum has just grown by leaps and bounds. I'm personally one that enjoys the Paul Feinbaum show. I think that he's fair both ways. He's equally as biased whenever things are going bad towards Auburn and Alabama to me. Now, of course, Auburn fans feel like he's a lot tougher on Auburn than he is Alabama, and Alabama vice versa. But he's the face of this SEC network to start it. There's no question. And he should be. I mean, well, I don't know if he should be the face. That isn't exactly his strong suit, but I think that he's the voice of this SEC True.
network. And I go back to, yeah, you're right. Auburn fans think he's pro Alabama, and look, how quickly we forget. I can tell you right now, back when we had Franchione and Dubose and Shula, he smoked Alabama all the time. I was living in Birmingham at the time, and he smoked them all the time. And Alabama fans couldn't stand it, and I couldn't either, but I couldn't stop listening. And then I finally realized, you know what? It's not him I should be mad at. He's just telling like it is. I mean, we are terrible, and he's telling us we're terrible, and we got to do something about it. If we want him to say nice things, start winning, and we did. So I mean, that's what happens. I mean, he started killing. He was not necessarily. He was never bought into like the Gene Chizik idea. He was like, okay, look, that was Cam Newton's team. I think the wheels are going to come off, and they did. I mean, I think the guy knows what he's talking about. And now he is bought into the Gus Malzahn, which a lot are. He has, and I think that he feels like things are evening out in the state. And you know what? They are. I mean, if you're an Alabama fan and think everything's going to fall apart at Auburn, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's just not. I mean, they're going to be pretty good for a while, and so we just have to keep getting better. 800-782-0108, and it's a beautiful thing that his caller base is Auburn and Alabama and has been for a long time, so it's good for our programs, I think, on a national media level to be talked about as much as they are here on the SEC network. I have heard some Auburn fans, and you and I have talked about this slightly. We'd love to see a representative from each team have a place at the table. I said I like Greg McElroy to be a homer. But who would it be? See, I mean, I understand. I had a name on Sports Call. The top name that was brought up on Sports Call was Takeo Spikes. Okay, that's great. And I saw where Takeo Spikes also tweeted, okay, that'd be cool. Yeah. Do you think Takeo Spikes would do that? I mean, he's made enough money. I mean, I don't. Well, I mean, I think that, yes, he has made enough money, but he's doing TV and doing radio and doing it a lot. And he's doing it on a smaller basis, I think, than the SEC network would provide for him. That could be true. And I think he'd be he's one of those that when he's up there, he's got a little bit. He's not as far out there as Charles Barkley, but he is willing to say some things. And I think he'd be a good face for Auburn. And I think that if you did even it out, though, Luke, Greg McElroy could be what I wished he would be, and that's just a sheer homer. Yeah, he could be that, but I'm going to tell you, I listened to this show the other day. Anybody who thinks he's just going to go around saying how awesome Alabama is all the time, I don't think that's true. I mean, he's going to sit there and he's going to talk about other teams, and if Alabama doesn't do well, I can guarantee you Greg McElroy will say something about it. 800-782-0108. Love to hear from you. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this. I watched the
All right, second hour about to kick off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take it away.
Second hour is the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. I'm Randy Lee alongside Luke Robinson. We're in beautiful downtown Alexander City at JR Sports Bar and Grill, and love for you to come out, have a great lunch. Bring your kids out all year long. If they're in uniform, practice uniform or game uniform, they'll eat off the kids' menu for $1.99. Sun Festival in Alexander City. Go out, support the Alexander City Chamber of Commerce that has put on a great event here, tons of events, 50-plus events in the Alexander City Lake Martin community this weekend. And tonight, Diamond Rio and the fireworks show brought to you by Winn-Dixie here in Alexander City will be out there to culminate Sun Festival.
Randy, is there anything more fun when the dead season, when people keep putting their foot in their mouths? It's been a great week if you like to hear people say things that they probably shouldn't say or at least should have reworded. First of all, I thought Bob Stoops, he kind of went off on the SEC a little bit. It doesn't take much to prod him in the direction of the SEC. And my goodness gracious, is Oklahoma living off that win over Alabama? I mean, that's great. I mean, they beat Alabama, no bones about it. But I think, you know, he took exception to the fact that Nick Saban said, look, we approach that thing like a consolation game, and his point is valid. His point was it was very tough to get them motivated after the Auburn game because they felt like they had it the whole season. And it's right. I mean, it doesn't take anything away from Oklahoma.
If anybody should know, it's Big Game Bob.
Exactly. And for him to go off and say, well, you know, we took care of business in the SEC, they don't play non-conference games. And so he went on a little rant, and it just sounded stupid. And then meanwhile, it's so funny, the Big 12 folks always love to allude, or Pac-12 or Big 10, always love to allude that SEC has more thuggish-type players. First of all, Oklahoma allowed Dorial Green Beckham to enroll in school, who was booted from Missouri. Secondly, Joe Mixon, who was signed in this class for Oklahoma, he allegedly punched a woman last night. So he's in some trouble. And so, you know, Big Game Bob, clean up your own backyard. Secondly, how about the whole thing with the NFL and Ray Rice, and now Stephen A. Smith goes on TV. I don't know if you saw this yesterday. Stephen A. You did? You said?
I didn't know.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, for those who don't know, is a very acerbic, outspoken guy that's generally an NBA guy. He's on ESPN's First Take with Skip Bayless.
Which makes that program very good. It's back and forth. It's a banner back and forth. Whether you like Skip Bayless or Stephen A., the two of them up there together is really a perfect match.
Well, both of them take turns at sounding incredibly dumb sometimes, though. I mean, Skip Bayless particularly.
I think that's the stick, though.
And I'm okay with that. People may say that about us, but Stephen A. Smith apparently said, and I listened to it. It wasn't apparently. I'm trying to paraphrase what he said. That something like, you know, okay, it was wrong for Ray Rice to hit his then girlfriend, now wife, which is a whole other subject. It's wrong for that to happen. Domestic violence is wrong. But I try to tell my daughters, don't make it so that somebody wants to hit you. It was so dumb the way he phrased it, and he's taken a lot of backlash for it, and he should. And now we've got somebody else coming in about the Michael Sam thing. I just noticed this just a second ago. The American Family Association president, Tim Wildman, has come out in defense of Tony Dungy, who said some mildly controversial things. I think that was a little overblown about Michael Sam the other day. Of course, Michael Sam, the first openly gay man in the NFL. But this Tim Wildman of the American Family Association said that they should not be putting Michael Sam in the locker room with all that beefcake. That's his quote, all that beefcake. I mean, you know, do people not have a PR agent? You know, again, the Krista Conlon, who I will be getting married to here eventually, she does PR for a living. She would say, you know what, hey, let me check some of these quotes before you send them out. Because just to say something like all that beefcake makes you sound so stupid. And I understand where your point is, but you got to learn to phrase some of these things better. You know, I don't like the world being so PC, but there are some things you have to be very sensitive to. I don't think you can say something like, in a roundabout way, she was kind of asking for it. You can't say things like that. I mean, there's never a time to hit a woman under any circumstance for any reason, period, in the story.
Big topic this week also, and I think that it's funny as you head in and you've got all the media that you've been seeing the Luigi cap that Nick Saban had on.
I thought that was unbelievable. It's one of the best pictures of the year.
Colin Cowherd's one of your favorite ones.
Oh, I just think he's awesome. And you know what? Even when I don't like him, I think he's awesome.
And it's because you think it's because of the knowledge that he puts out there, or his delivery, or first off, it's amazing that he or Paul Feinbaum or anyone can sit up there by themselves and do what they do on a daily basis. Jim Rome, you can hate, love him, do whatever, but he still gets up there and brings a good product every day and catches you listening. Trust me, I like the two-man dynamic that we have here. I couldn't imagine sitting up here talking by myself. I do know some that do it better than others, but Colin Cowherd, he usually has a good take that I end up coming on my program and repeating whatever he said, Luke.
And he usually tries to go the other way from people. And the thing that I really love about him, you can tell they have actual production meetings where they all sit around and go, okay, here's what happened. Now let's dig a little deeper into this story. Let's just don't go with what everybody else is going to say, which is this. Let's find some other angle to this story and capitalize on it. And he does it as well as anybody out there. It's unbelievable. His show every day, he has an interesting point. They're not always valid, in my opinion, but they're always interesting.
800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. Our trivia of the day is which SEC team has the easiest conference schedule for the upcoming year. Call in. We'll give away an Auburn or Alabama Sports Blitz T-shirt.
Well, let's go back to what did you think of the Tony Dungy thing? What he was saying about Michael Sam, which is essentially, you know what, Tony Dungy said if I wouldn't have drafted him because I thought he would have been too much of a distraction. And I think that there are ways to say what he said and be absolutely correct because I agree with him. I just think he could have said maybe a little bit more diplomatically.
Let me keep that question right there. Go back to the phone line. Scott Hardy, you're on Sports Blitz.
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Good to hear from you,
Scott.
buddy.
All right. Well, I was listening about the national hosts and shows, but with the Tony Dungy question right there, if you have that available, I disagree. I think it would have been a distraction, but for somebody who has written so many books on leadership and is highly regarded as he is on his ability to handle high-pressure situations, I thought he probably, as Luke said, could have articulated his point a little bit better, but I don't think it was a distraction, more so because the Rams, I think, have handled this, and their players have handled it better than anybody has. I think the media has blown it out of proportion because they want it to be something bigger than what it is, because in the next 5 to 10 years, there won't be any telling how many days you may have playing in the NFL. So I think it just needed somebody to do it, and then at that point, then everything else transition-wise will happen. But Tony Dungy, I think, could have said it a little differently than what he said.
No, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Randy. I don't mean to interrupt you. And I agree with that. And also, he advocated giving Michael Vick a second shot. I mean, Michael Vick did some incredibly inhumane criminal stuff, and he was all about giving Michael Vick another shot. And when it comes down to it, if he had just said, you know what, I wouldn't have drafted Michael Sam because I don't think he's good enough, then I could have bought that because he didn't have a great combine. He doesn't have the measurables. But, I'm the other way. If you're the SEC Defensive Player of the Year and it's the 7th round, I'm going to take a flyer on you. I don't care what you are. And if you don't work out, I cut you, no big whoop. I usually cut 7th rounders anyway.
And before I go back to you, Scott, the best take that I've heard all week is that Jason Collins, the first openly gay basketball player to come out and actually play in a game for the Brooklyn Nets this year. It's a big story, the game that he comes out, the big story, the first game that they had at home. But then you don't talk about it anymore. It's really not even brought up, and I almost think that it's a boring non-topic. And I wonder if this Michael Sam situation is going to be a lot like that. And the broadcaster that I heard talking said that he felt like it would be. But, Scott, your thoughts. Who do you like, national hosts or broadcasters out there, or shows in general that you really like?
Well, the main two that come to mind, you would probably say would be Dan Patrick and Colin Cowherd. But between those two, I favor Cowherd a little bit more because he seems to irritate people in this part of the country a little bit more, and I like to get his take on it. But from an interview standpoint, I think nobody does it better than Dan Patrick. But I really like Scott Van Pelt. I think he's probably one of the funniest guys that ESPN has, and he's one of the guys that keeps them afloat. But I try to keep it national sometimes, but once it gets football season, I try to listen to more regional shows, and then you listen to docs and stuff. And, of course, the guys at Sportz Blitz can't do anything without them as well.
Well, thank you, Scott. We appreciate your phone call today, buddy, and we enjoyed having you on Sports Call on Thursday and looking forward to having you on all of our programs a lot more moving forward.
All right, appreciate it. You have a good rest of the day, man.
800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. He had a very good point. When it comes in the middle of the football season, very seldom do I listen to a national show over a local regional show because I want to hear about certain things, and there's enough to talk about in SEC country and in the state of Alabama for me to go to a Jocks, to go. I went to Sports Call constantly before we started hosting because I wanted to hear about Auburn football, and that was the best place to go and hear somebody talk about it a ton. So that's what we're going to continue to try to do on our programs.
And way back when, before any Sports Blitz, before XM Sirius, I used to listen to Sports Call as an Alabama fan. It's the only one I could pick up. It's the only one I could pick up in this area back in the 90s.
800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this. Checking Luke out. Welcome back to the Sports Blitz Saturday Saturday Sports Countdown live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill. If you see Luke and I waving to the front table out there, my son Kendall is with us today, and he is waving and clapping around, so we'll probably be waving and clapping back to him throughout the program. But, again, we'd love to hear from you. 800-782-0108, 256-234-6221. Late broadcasting, as I heard JJ out there emceeing the band battle last night. They're everywhere. Cubby was out at the Path and the Farmers Market this morning doing a great job, but they're very active in this community. And today they will host the Sun Festival Ellick City Lake Broadcasting Tailgate Party Barbecue Cook-Off. It starts over the Sportsplex at 12 noon and runs until 6 p.m. 9 barbecue teams will be competing, and again, tonight will culminate with Diamond Rio playing and a fireworks show by Winn-Dixie that's brought to you by Winn-Dixie here in Alexander City. So make sure to come out to the Sportsplex in Alexander City and be a part of it. We've had a question out there, national hosts, national shows that you really enjoy as we head into the SEC network. We had a sports call question last week that got a bunch of interest and a bunch of talk, and we'd love to see an Auburn guy on the SEC network to kind of give an Auburn flow. The one name that came up more often than others was Takeo Spikes. And Luke, Takeo Spikes, a great player back in the 90s and enjoyed a 13 to 15-year NFL career. A lot of response of Auburn fans that would love to see him on the network.
I think it'd be great to have him on. Again, I don't think it's a conspiracy about the SEC network not having somebody from Auburn on. I don't believe that. For instance, I know Shadow who calls Sports Call all the time. He said, it just makes all the sense in the world because they don't want Auburn to do it. Look, if there was ever a time for a conspiracy, this is going off topic for a second. But you know how everybody loves to talk about the Red Elephant Club. When we first started this show and Nick Saban was starting to recruit really well and everybody, the Red Elephant Club, Alabama controls everything. Nick Marshall, his fine has been paid. Mm-hmm. Wink, wink. And the officer now has been arrested for some other thing. If that had happened with an Alabama player, how many Auburn fans would say the Red Elephant Club set that guy up to get him fired?
And that's the beauty of this.
It's the beauty of it. I'm so glad it happened to Auburn now, so I can say, it's like last year when that Auburn player faked the injury against Arkansas.
Yeah.
You lose the right to complain. It's over. You can't discuss it anymore. You can't discuss Red Elephant Club anymore. There's too many coincidences. I'm not saying Alabama's not doing it. They probably would. I'm down with it. I'm okay with it. But y'all do it too. That's all I want you to say is, okay, we do it too. It's all good. Everybody's on the same level.
And here's the beauty of growing up in the state of Alabama and having a good friend like your brother as your nemesis. You got Auburn, you got Alabama. Is when you start saying that, I start coming up with some Alabama blotter that I can come back with.
And we got it.
I mean, it is. I'm thinking, boy, Rolando McClain. I'm just going to tell you exactly the same thing.
Well, exactly. But
is that the story from past? It's nothing new there, is it?
For Rolando McClain? No. It's nothing like that just recently happened.
Okay.
Rolando's been through, it's really kind of a sad story. He's been through he came from a tough place, and he never really got his act together. And then being drafted by Oakland was probably the worst thing that could happen to him. He goes to a disorganized organization, and things just don't work out for him. Then he goes to Baltimore, and he retires again. And now he's back with the Cowboys, assuming he doesn't spend any jail time. And you know what? I mean, I'm hoping he gets it turned around. You always want to see somebody get it turned around, but I'm also big on you reap what you sow. And if you do some things, I mean, you're going to have to pay the price. And I feel like he may end up having to pay a price, and it may be that he cost himself a lot of money professionally because of the way he's gone. But, oh, my gosh, I always think about Auburn people saying there's so much media bias in this state. That's another thing Shadow always talks about. Philip Marshall, who does nothing but write for Auburn Undercover now, I think it is.
24/7,
He was he was with Auburn Undercover. He was the sports editor for the Huntsville Times forever. And all he ever did was talk about pro-Auburn stuff. So, I mean, you guys have had – Kevin Skarbinski, I think, is more pro-Auburn than he is Alabama. I mean, I think both of us – he takes shots at both of us time to time. But I would say he writes more genuinely positive Auburn things, and he doesn't do it because he's a big Auburn fan, in my opinion. He does it to rile up Alabama fans. It's kind of like people have learned, if you want to make money – poke Alabama fans in the eye for a while, and they will start calling you. They will say they're boycotting you, but they're always listening.
Very good points. 800-782-0108, our trivia question. And the first one, Auburn or Alabama Sportz Blitz T-shirt we'll give away. Which SEC team has the easiest conference schedule? If we don't get it here in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and give it out there where we can talk about it, Luke. But conference schedules in general are a hot topic this week. I guess they just go from one topic to the next each and every week, try to give the people like us something to talk about. But Auburn, in the poll that I saw, it had Utah. Utah had the number one schedule in the country. How'd that happen, by the way?
That is very odd. I don't know who. I'm going to have to look Utah's schedule up to make sure that's right.
But we'll pull it up. But Utah was rated the top schedule or toughest schedule in the country, and Auburn came in second. Now, who? I think this is ESPN's making this it's not a prognostication, but this story was written by an ESPN writer, but it had Auburn with the second toughest schedule in the country. It had Arkansas, I think, at the 7th, but it had 5 of the top 10 teams were from the SEC. Alabama not with a very tough schedule. They have played some very good out-of-conference games over the last 5 or 6 years, so I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's just some of the teams that you thought would be good
are not good.
Well,
when Alabama and West Virginia scheduled to play, West Virginia was very good. I mean, Alabama's done an incredible job ever since Nick Saban's been there of playing a big-name non-conference opponent. Some of those big-name non-conference opponents hadn't lived up to their billing. I mean, Alabama always shows up because they hadn't lost many of them. The last one they lost was 2007 against Florida State. So, I mean, Virginia Tech, get better. West Virginia, you beat Clemson 70 to something in the Orange Bowl 2 years ago, and now you can't, get out of your own way. I mean, and by the way, Oklahoma. West Virginia is in the Big 12, so we're playing one of your teams. Let's see how that turns out.
800-782-0108. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. We've got about a half hour left here on the program. Love for you to come out to JR Sports Bar and Grill. Have a great lunch. $5.49 snack wing basket is the special. If you want the drink with it, it's $6.99. It's a great special out here at JR's. Beautiful weather outside. We had the farmers market going on. The Path cook-off going on downtown as well. In the middle of Sun Festival here in Alexander City, and a ton going on at the Sportsplex tonight, culminating with Diamond Rio as they will close things out tonight, probably around 8 o'clock. So I'd love for you to come out and be a part of that. Luke, we've been talking national hosts, national shows that we enjoy. I'm about to go to your favorite topic that we do on our program, but if I don't bring it up right now, I'll never talk about it.
What?
And that's Major League Baseball.
Oof.
In the Hall of Fame class this year, though, if you're from this area, it doesn't get any better. Got Frank Thomas going in, who was a great player at Auburn, had a 382 batting average overall during his time at Auburn University, will be the first SEC baseball player to go into the Hall of Fame. I need to repeat that. That is beyond me, but it is a stat that I saw this week.
I thought there was an SEC bias.
Frank Thomas will be the first SEC baseball player to make it into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame.
That blows me away. It really does. Because this probably is, well, it's just lately, though, that it's the best
I guess so.
Conference in the country probably in baseball, right?
And baseball's tough because a lot of your very top tier athletes don't make it into college. They're drafted out of high school.
Well, and our best athletes around here are going to play football.
Yeah. And so
or go to Kentucky and play basketball.
It's tough. 800-782-0108. But also not only Frank Thomas, but the two pitchers for the Braves going in at the same time. I wish Smoltz would have retired around the same time, so all three could have gone in together. But Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine will go into the Hall of Fame also, and which brought up a unique question that we had on Sports Call earlier in the week. So I'd like to get your take on it. Which Major League Baseball player outside of the ones that are currently in deserve to be there the most? Pete Rose was the top choice there. Oh. But any other thoughts, especially Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Clemens, especially Clemens and Bonds, they easily had enough before they started shooting the roids up to be easily into the Hall of Fame. But you got an opinion there, Luke?
Yeah, I would not put either one of them in. I feel like they continued to do this at a time when they knew what was going on, when they knew what was happening, and they just couldn't quit. And I think that's part of their punishment. The Pete Rose thing to me is so incredibly ridiculous. I find it so stupid that baseball has no problem. They've basically eliminated his name everywhere. He can't go anywhere, and they've allowed other guys who have done some incredibly stupid things that really did directly affect the Barry Bonds being on steroids and Mark McGwire and Roger Clemens, their history of juicing up didn't just affect a game. It affected seasons. It affected other teams. There's no telling how many careers it affected. It was awful what they were doing to the sport. And, it was short-term gains and long-term losses. Baseball is just now recovering. That's why we're seeing all these no-hitters now or near no-hitters, because not everybody's juicing up anymore and the pitchers have the advantage again. So I think that it's such a joke that they're even considered, and this even more of a joke that Pete Rose isn't in. But if I had to sacrifice those guys getting in for Pete Rose getting in, I would do it. I think Pete Rose should be in, and it's such a no-brainer I don't even understand it.
I totally agree, and next year Major League Baseball will allow Pete Rose to have a part in the All-Star event that's at Cincinnati, and it seems to me that they're slowly making the move to correct what I believe is a fault here in the system, and I'd love to see Pete Rose back in and get into the Hall of Fame where he so very much deserves to be there. We didn't get a trivia answer, so I want to go ahead and talk about it, and it's which SEC team has the weakest conference schedule coming into the season. That's Missouri. The SEC opponents that they take on, Luke, had a combined 24-40 mark in the SEC last year. Just a very, very poor schedule right here, and you're taking on, I guess, one of the teams that they'll definitely have on the schedule, and nobody really knows where they're going to be, is Florida, and maybe that's the reason that it's as down as you see it currently.
Well, I think their toughest road game is at South Carolina, without a doubt. They were picked for the SEC SEC East championship. They go to South Carolina, and they lost to them last year at home. But I'd never liked judging a team's schedule based on the previous year's records, because Auburn, case in point. I mean, if you had said, Auburn's bringing our strength of schedule down to start the season, well, at the end of the season, Auburn was probably the strongest opponent you faced all year. So it's not really fair to do it that way. I mean, things turn around, coaches change, new players, new blood comes in that may affect the chemistry. So I don't like to do it that way, either plus or minus. But I'm just looking at their schedule, and yeah, it could be tougher. I mean, their SEC West opponents are at Texas A&M and at Arkansas. I mean, A&M, they lose Johnny Manziel, and Arkansas is probably arguably the worst team in the SEC. So I feel like that's the luck of the draw, though. Even if we played 9 conference games, like everybody in the Big 12 has a fit over, who's to say that their 12th conference game wouldn't be Ole Miss or Mississippi State instead of Alabama, LSU, or Auburn? I mean, you don't know. I mean, it's luck of the draw. Sometimes that happens. And I go back to everybody having a duck about Alabama playing Tennessee. Well, I mean, where was everybody when Alabama was getting drummed by Tennessee 7 straight years? I mean, it happened, and I was sitting through it, and Tennessee was beating us every year. They were the most years. And now it's the shoes on the other foot. The problem is Tennessee doesn't look like they're going to recover anytime soon. They're bringing in some good recruits now, but, I mean, Tennessee's got a long road to hoe, and it's just the way it works out. It's the luck of the draw. Florida wasn't always Florida, and now they're not Florida right now. And Georgia, you know what? They had owned Auburn for a while here recently until last year, but they've had some down years too. I mean, Mark Richt went 7-6 in one season here recently. So you never know what you're going to get. And you got to let the schedules play out. Now, there's one thing you can control. If you're Texas A&M, you don't play Lamar. Period. End of story. Get them off the schedule. And if you are going to play Lamar, then you've got to work a Texas in. You got to work a Oklahoma in. You got to work a USC in. And they are beefing their schedule up in future years. This year's schedule, if Texas A&M, I said this on Sportz Blitz the other day, even if they go undefeated, I would give the benefit of the doubt to a team that lost one game over Texas A&M because of their out-of-conference schedule, which is just it's a travesty.
I'd love your thoughts. I think Texas A&M is going to have a massive drop-off this year. I really do believe it. I think their defense, you cannot cover up how terrible that defense was last year, and you're not going to change it with the same coaching staff in the next year. I think you're going to see a 500 Texas A&M team this year at best.
I agree with that, but I think that it's going to be one of those situations where Texas A&M, record-wise, will take a big-time step back, and that's what, in the end, what everybody's judged on. But if you watch this team, I think you'll be able to see Kevin Sumlin. Here's a chance for him to put his stamp on it, take the Manziel tag off, because right now that's all people associate Texas A&M with is Johnny Manziel. Here's your chance, Kevin Sumlin, to prove that you're a good coach. Just show that you're building to something, because the team that's recruiting right behind Alabama in the SEC, it ain't Auburn, it ain't LSU, it ain't Georgia, it ain't Florida, it's Texas A&M. They are right behind Alabama. They have got a good, strong class.
When we come back, we're going to close out the final 2 segments of the program talking about Auburn and Alabama thoroughly. We're going to run down some thoughts, some of the schedule updates, some of the thoughts of the tough games that we'll see throughout this college football season. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
He's so crazy.
Y'all are.
Three, two, one.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. 2 segments left here in the program. 800-782-0108, 256-234-6221 to be part of the program. Love for you to come out, have a great lunch at JR Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Alexander City. $6.99 snack wing basket with a T is the lunch special each and every time you hear us on the air with the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown.
You wanted to talk about Alabama and Auburn in this segment, and I've got some great news for Auburn. Two pieces of great news. First of all, Richard McBride, who is a linebacker that we've seen out of Charles Henderson. He would, speaking of Jamie Dubose, would have been coached by Jamie Dubose, or at least was for 5 minutes. He is committed to Auburn. He's one of those 4-star players in the state. I think when we were talking earlier, he's listed as the 11th best player in Rivals. And also, Auburn's going to have another linebacker here coming pretty soon. You know why?
Why?
Because a linebacker from Georgia just got arrested again.
I said that on Thursday. I said I know.
No,
I know.
I'm talking about like this morning.
Oh, okay. Well, there was another
one that got arrested. Yeah, Auburn's about to have an influx again. They're going to have to cut some people to make room for all these Georgia arrests. But this guy, Georgia linebacker David Bellamy, was arrested this morning, apparently for DUI and speeding. You know, I mean, look, we joke about it, and maybe we'll end up at Auburn. Who knows? But my point is, Mark Richt, this is so bothersome to me. I mean, this is the guy who's supposed to be Captain Christian, Mr. Do-Gooder. Why can't he get his players under control? I mean, joke about him going to Auburn all you want to. They're booted from Georgia for a reason. Why can't he get a guy like David Bellamy to not get a DUI after all these other arrests, after you're catching so much heck for everybody else, and then another player goes out and does it? I mean, what do you do? I mean, I guess in Mark Richt's defense, what can you do besides continue to boot him off the team?
I guess so. And in his defense also, I'm sure that there are things set in place to try to help these kids and to try to make sure that they're on the straight and narrow. And some schools just have a harder time, and maybe that's the type of kid they're recruiting. I don't know. 800-782-0108. We're going to talk about Auburn and Alabama the last 2 segments. Jacob Coker is the talk for anybody that wants to even start discussing Alabama. Any news, any insight that you have there, Luke?
I have not heard anything but positive reports coming out of skeleton drills they do where the quarterback will go out and pass with wide receivers on their own time. 7-on-7 type stuff. But you know what? Have you ever heard a non-positive report from somebody like that? Whenever, you would hear Chris Todd's the best-looking, quarterback we ever saw, or Greg McElroy, he's got an arm like you wouldn't believe. And, it ends up being they are what you think they are. But here's the deal. Jacob Coker, to me, I think he's an incredible athlete. I think he's undersold by a lot of folks. He may be oversold by some Alabama people. I've got a real wait-and-see attitude about him, but I'll say this, all the things you want in a quarterback, he has. Now, will it translate onto the football field? None of us know. None of us know either way, but it doesn't scare me at all that he doesn't have any experience. I've talked about it several times that, Nick Marshall didn't have any experience. He comes in, they win the SEC last year. Greg McElroy was a first-year starter. He won a national championship, went undefeated. Cam Newton was a first-year starter, national championship, undefeated. A.J. McCarron at one time was a first-year starter, one-loss national championship. You just go down the list. There are a lot of guys who've been first-year starters, and I think Jacob Coker can be one of those guys.
Heisman prognosticators don't believe this, but I'd like your thoughts. T.J. Yeldon, he is 2 or 3 in the SEC when you're looking at Heisman hopefuls, right there with Nick Marshall, probably one step behind Todd Gurley, who I think is a step in front of both of them. Luke, do you think he takes a step back this year and some of the reign goes to Derrick Henry, who looks like the next great back there at Alabama?
Yeah, I think that, but it could help. I mean, you go back to Mark Ingram's Heisman Trophy winning year, and he had some carries taken away from him too, but it may have helped him a little bit. So I feel like I really do. I feel like this can help T.J. Yeldon because maybe he won't be in the entire fourth quarter against Auburn this year. I mean, maybe you can let somebody come in and give him a rest because I think that hurt him without a doubt. But that's been Nick Saban's MO. I talked about it on the podcast with Jimmy Stein the other day. Nick Saban just loves to leave his starters in. He trusts them so much more than he trusts the backups, which you can spin that in a good way or a negative way. I really spin it in a negative way, that I feel like you've got to let some other guys come in there a little bit earlier. I mean, it'll be 35-0, and we've got all our starters in, and I'm thinking, man, I don't want to get anybody hurt. I want to get some more experience in there. But Nick Saban doesn't look at it that way, and he's won a heck of a lot more games than me.
Lane Kiffin experiment, where does that stand currently? Is it working out? Does it seem like they're playing fair, playing fun? What's the word I'll use? I mean,
gosh, I'll say
I still think it's going to be a great story this year to see how they interact.
I do too. And the only thing I'll say about the Lane Kiffin story is the things I've heard, and I cannot confirm any of them because it's really all just rumor and innuendo, about him as a person are exactly the way you picture Lane Kiffin as a person. And you probably don't have a flattering view of him. Take that any way you want to. I'm okay with Lane Kiffin, being whatever kind of guy he is, as long as he doesn't do anything criminal or anything to embarrass Alabama, and he gets the job done on the football field. I mean, there's some jerks out there that are good at what they do, and Nick Saban probably being one of them, according to a lot of people. But as long as he gets the job done offensively, and I feel he's got all the weapons, there is no excuse for Alabama not to break school records this year, is my point. And even with Jacob Coker coming in and bringing brand new, I think Jacob Coker athletically is beyond A.J. McCarron. Is he as good of a game manager? Is he as good of an overall quarterback? I don't know that yet.
And I will say this, though, and I'll defend Nick Saban here. Whatever you do, don't put Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin in the same category. And I know that you're not meaning to do that. I just mean that Nick Saban can be unruly, but he's unruly in a way that he never makes the university look bad, in my opinion. He says some things that to the media that's maybe just, look, I'm not worried about the things that you're worried about. That's the way he comes across to me. Lane Kiffin just comes across as a total prick. I don't know any other thing to say. And sometimes, but Nick Saban, to me, does not come across that way. They're polar opposites. That's the reason I think it's going to be unique to see how this thing works out.
I think you could make the case, gosh, and I hate to say this because I like Nick Saban. I mean, I know a lot of people think he's a jerk, okay, but if you want to think they're both jerks, they are polar opposite in the way they are jerks.
That's my point.
Okay, now I don't believe Nick Saban is a jerk myself. I've never really been a big Lane Kiffin fan. I'm still not, but I look at it like, you know what, Nick Saban's earned the right to choose who he wants to come in here and do this. I mean, it's not like if Mike Shula had hired Lane Kiffin, I'd be off the rails right now. But, I mean, I look at it like if Nick Saban wants to hire Lane Kiffin, he can do that. I mean, he's earned the right to hire whoever he wants. If he wants to hire the Burger King guy to come in and coach the defense, he's earned the right to do that.
One last Alabama question. I know we're up against one more break, and then we'll come back and we'll close out the program talking about Auburn linebacker play. Reuben Foster, some of the other players. Who jumps out this year on the defensive side of the ball for Alabama that's really, I wouldn't say none of the Alabama players are no names, not the way recruiting is now, but who is coming from an area where they didn't get a lot of playing time last year and they're going to jump on the scene this year? Is Reuben Foster one of them?
Well,
also?
I think so, but Reuben Foster just seems to stay hurt is the only problem I have. I'm going to say Reggie Ragland, who we saw as a freshman win a state championship in basketball. I think he's incredible. I think he's very athletic. He's lost some weight, reportedly, around plus or minus 10 pounds. I think he needed to. He's a real thick guy, kind of Dante Hightower-ish, but he wasn't quite as quick as I thought he should be. I remember last year Johnny Manziel really put a good move on him, but Johnny Manziel put a lot of good moves on everybody, including a lot of women in Vegas. But I go back to Reggie Ragland, and I look at his spring game tape where he was able to tackle Derrick Henry by himself in the open field. That's a big deal. We saw Oklahoma couldn't do it. I mean, if you got one-on-one with Derrick Henry, chances are he's going to win that battle, and Reggie Ragland won it. So that told me, okay, maybe he's getting it. He's catching on. Reggie Ragland's been playing some, but he has not been the star we thought he would be, and I think this year he can break out.
Go ahead and take our last break here on the program. When we come back, we're going to run down Auburn, some of the highlights going on as we're heading into football season, recruiting updates from Auburn also, and we'll take your phone calls, 256-234-6221. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
Clear. Okay, guys, you got about 3 or 4 minutes. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. We're live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill, and love for you to come out. $6.99 snack wing basket is the special, and reminder out there, JR is currently having happy hour specials Monday through Friday, 4 to 6. Come on out and take advantage of those in beautiful downtown Alexander City. Talking Auburn football, and one thing that we talked a little bit about on call, but I'd like to get your thoughts. Gus Malzahn coming in, it's kind of funny how the difference a year will make. But on the receiving core for Auburn, last year coming into the season, Luke, I can remember us saying, I mean, they got some pieces, but not any real players. And this year, if you look down the list of receivers at Auburn, there's a lot of them that are high-tier, high-skilled, great athletes out there at receiver, and I can't remember another time outside of maybe the early part of the 2000s when he had Courtney Taylor and Devin Arumashadu and Ben Obamanu out there at the receiving core that we had as many as we currently do now.
Yeah, Auburn's got some talent at wide receiver. There's no doubt about it. They just got to get the ball to them. And, you know, Sammy Coates, was named, the top freak in college football by Fox Sports, and, you know, it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, because he is a beast when you look at him up close and personal. I mean, he's something else, and I think he's going to have another big year. I think he and Amari Cooper will be all SEC.
Yeah, I think both of them, and they both were selected as all SEC. And when you talk the remainder of that receiving core is Duke Williams, 5-star recruit, junior college, the top player in junior college this past year, a huge body that you saw in the spring. And the players, we had several of them on with us during media days, and Luke, they just rave about this kid. And you add him to Ricardo Lewis and Tony Stevens and Jalen Denson, who will be back and also got another year. Quan Bray, who feels like he's been there for the last 50 years. When you add all of these together, you're putting together a skill position set that really, I said it again, it's one of the best we've ever had there at Auburn, in my opinion.
Yeah, it very well could be. It's so funny. 2 years ago, you know, everybody thought Quan Bray was a bust. Ricardo Lewis was, and it's just, you know, one magical year. In fact, I would say Ricardo Lewis, if he hadn't had that tip catch, I mean, people wouldn't be talking about him much coming in this year. Would you think so?
I don't think, but when you look at him on the field, athleticism-wise, you know what you got. And some guys just do that. Receivers, a lot of times receivers don't need to be. You know, I was going to bring that question up if we had the time on Alabama's. You know, you've got Amari Cooper, but after that, in my eyes, there's a drop-off. Last year you had some really good players that were sitting there in the mix, but Amari Cooper, especially this year, is a drop-off after that.
The one name I throw in there is Christian Jones.
Okay, yeah, Christian Jones.
I love Christian Jones.
But he's a do-it-all. He's a Ricardo Lewis type to me. Quan Bray.
I do. But I think Amari Cooper is so far better than really everybody in this league. He may be better than anybody in the country. Amari Cooper is the best pure wide receiver I've ever seen Alabama have.
Sun Festival here in Alexander City, Diamond Rio tonight. Get out there, support the local chamber and the local community. For Luke Robinson, I'm Randy Lee saying thanks for tuning in to the Sportz Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown.